Welcome to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. I am Halli Casser-Jayne. This week, a conversation with Washington Post White House bureau chief and author of the New York Times juicy bestseller, A Very Stable Genius, Donald J. Trump's Testing of America, Philip Rucker. But we begin with our weekly politics review when former White House correspondent and journalist extraordinaire and my partner in politics, Matthew Cooper, joins me to slice and dice all things politics and Donald Trump, too. Will the coronavirus tank Donald Trump and the economy, too? Who won the wacky South Carolina debate? Will former Vice President Joe Biden win the South Carolina primary as he promised all he would? Or will Bernie Sanders win the big prize? And that's just where we begin. Here we go. Okay, Matthew, here we are at another week. They go by so fast. Have you noticed what's going on with speed, or is it just me?
I don't know. I feel like they're dragging a little.
Okay. Well, let me help you speed things up a little bit.
What's the expression that the days are short, the years are long?
Oh gosh. Well, that's depressing.
Yeah.
Or something. I don't know what it is. As I told you before, oh my gosh, I'm overworked this week. You can't even imagine. So, I said to Matt before we started, Matt, you're going to have to carry this because I'm pitiful today. But we'll see how pitiful. That's why I love you. We'll see how pitiful I am. You know, we talked in the office about how we're going to handle this week, and I decided that, we're going with coronavirus first for a multitude of reasons. But just remember this, my friend. What did I say months ago that this was going to be bigger than people said it was going to be? Was I right?
You're always right.
No, I'm not always right.
Of course, you're right.
I'm not always right, but I was right about this.
Okay.
My instincts were telling me, this is not a good thing. But let's put this into context because, I actually think that this is being underplayed rather than overplayed. Not by Trump for his obvious political reasons, which we'll talk about in a moment. But, you know, this morning, Japan shut its schools down for a month. And they would not have done that for something that is just, quote unquote, slightly worse than the flu. So this starting to concern me on a serious level. So can we start there? What are your thoughts, dude? Are your instincts like mine? Like, uh-oh.
You know, I don't really trust my instincts on this because I'm such an ignoramus when it comes to infectious diseases. But look, you know, I know a little something about politics and economics, and it's clearly having huge reverberations. You know, it's a very integrated global economy. There's, you know, supply chains are really global at this point, and they're on tight deadlines, and you know, it doesn't take too much to jam up the works, and this is a big deal. So, you know, I don't know what the ultimate medical fallout's going to be in terms of, you know, patients or deaths, but in terms of the economics, we're already seeing it bigly in terms of the stock market, in terms of disruption, and I think there will be political fallout too.
So can I say to you that I actually, when I was writing, you know, the notes for today's show, I'm actually guilty talking about the economics of it in the wake of what this is. Is that just stupid of me? But we have to. But I do feel guilty about it, I have to say, because it just seems like...
Well, that's not to minimize the human suffering. I mean,
thank you. I feel better.
Yeah, was that what you felt guilty about?
I did, because I say when we start to get into something like this, where people, you know, are clearly losing their lives, and we're worried about the economic impact of it, I'm like, okay, you know,
yeah.
Well,
I mean, no, I think it goes without saying. Obviously, the human suffering is great, and you know, we hope it's contained, and we hope the, you know, mortality rate of this proves low. You know, we don't know.
But on the other hand, when the President of the United States starts fooling with people's lives, and at first didn't even want to go there because he was worried about the stock market and bringing attention to it, right? But 2,500 points down, he decided finally he was going to have to do something about this, or be tarred and feathered, if you will.
Right.
And I used tarred and feathered because that came up because it was in an episode this week. I'd never seen anybody tarred and feathered of Outlander. So yeah, that's why the words came up, because it's probably not politically correct anymore to say tarred and feathered. But okay. But here's the deal. He comes out last night, at an odd time of night. I guess the 6 o'clock news, he was going on the old that people actually watch the 6 o'clock news, but he came out 45 minutes late, and he goes political like within 2 seconds of it, saying, this is because the Dems, the stock market tanked because the Dems debate, which by the way, it tanked before the Dems debate. So.
Right. Well, I mean, it's, look, people expect their government to be competent at things like this and to handle these things seriously. And we've seen when, governments don't do that during Hurricane Katrina or other kind of disaster responses. It's had real consequences.
And let me throw this in. I don't know if you saw last night on CNN, there was a town hall, and Biden was on the town hall. I caught this actually in rerun.
Right.
And somebody asked him about, what motivates him, and he talked about his son, and I'm sitting there, I'm almost in tears. I mean, I've seen him do this, 1,000 times, Matt, but it's from the heart, and he exhibits such extraordinary pathos and
right.
He's so real when he gets into these moments that and it's shocking at this point because we've been living in unreality TV for the last 3.5 years. So to get this kind of whatever, and then you get Trump up there, cracking jokes, being weird, and just doesn't give you any sense of security, for us who might be like really going close to panic mode about this. And what an extraordinary thing. But I wonder where Americans are right now in all of this. I wonder if Americans' humanity hasn't been murdered because we've become inoculated against the Trump ugly.
Well, we don't know yet. I mean, we'll find out. I think people, Democrats and others, have wondered what might undo Trump. And, maybe it's something like this in terms of, a serious, challenge to the country in terms of health and safety that's, potentially botched.
Well, I said, I said on Twitter that, the old line about somebody could shoot him in the street or whatever and he'd still survive. And I said, if a MAGA loses their loved one because of the ineptness of the president, does that change, the whole ball of wax? But I digress because I want to get back into, some of this, bottom line and the politics of it. He turns the whole program over to Mike Pence, who by the way, I don't know if this makes any sense to you. First of all, there's an image, Matt. Mike Pence, Donald Trump, orange face, pink face. And I'm thinking to myself, and I told you I'm off the wall today, so go with me on this. Pence gets up there and, the president is so smart. Oh, that, he just bowing to the king. He's like his pinky ring. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
He's Trump's pinky ring. That's all that he is. But anyway, it turns out that Secretary Azar had no idea that Trump was about to turn all of this over to Pence, which he did for political reasons, obviously, his vice president running for re-election until 2 seconds before they got up there and did their little thing. But how about a scientist? Could we get a scientist involved in all of this? But of course, the Republicans don't believe in science.
I don't know if it has to be a scientist. The Obama administration was pretty widely hailed for its handling of the Ebola crisis, and they put Ron Klain, who had been Biden's chief of staff, among other things, in charge of it to run the interagency process. You really need someone who can really run that, and that's not necessarily a scientist. It's, you got to get a lot of different agencies working together. You need someone who's got the authority to cut across lines, and those are the kind of skills that help. And George W. Bush blew it in Katrina by not putting the right people. He had his
Brownie.
His FEMA had Brownie doing it, and he clearly was not up to it. It wasn't all his fault, but he wasn't up to it, and they had to put some, Coast Guard commandant in charge. And anyway, you need someone who can really knock heads and run the thing. And, given a health crisis in Indiana with an HIV outbreak,
let's talk about
Pence was governor there. Yeah, it doesn't really inspire confidence.
Right.
Well, there wasn't a. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, let's tell the public, because, listeners who may not know this, but, there's this outbreak in Indiana where Pence is the governor, and they said right away one of the things they needed was a needle exchange to curb the spread of AIDS. And, of course, we all know how Pence is on the gay rights issues and stuff, and that was like, no. So
he didn't want to do it. Plus, there was a state law that made it hard to do it, and so valuable time was lost. Eventually, they did get there, but it was did not speak well of his handling of this, and
yeah, right. So there you are.
I don't know where's right. Where's Dr. Ben Carson when you need him?
Isn't it interesting? He's kind of kept Carson, by the way, just for the often in the remember how front and center he was in the beginning of all of this?
Right.
Yeah, he's
right.
He's buried. He's goodbye. I don't explain. Well, I could go down that road 1,000 times, but we won't.
Right.
Talking about money though, and economics of it all. The Goldman Sachs this morning said that it likely that there's not going to be any profit generated this year already due to what's gone on with coronavirus, and this could definitely cause a recession. And
Oh yeah. I saw El Al, the Israeli airline, estimated 50-70% drop in revenues because of this. I mean, I don't even think there's been a case in Israel. And although there have been a fair number in the Middle East, especially Iran. Yeah, but it just shows you how, nobody's exempt from this.
So, I read this morning also, actually a friend pointed it out to me. I don't even know what this organization is. It's called Worldometer. Do you ever hear of Worldometer?
Worldometer, no.
Okay, so this turns out that, I guess they take the pulse all over the world, not just America, not just, whatever. And that they said that the death rate reported is actually 8%, not the 2%, reported. And so I bring that up only because I mentioned before about, are we getting the whole story here? And, countries like Japan closing the schools for a month tell me that it's far worse than, anybody really wants to, talk about. On this topic, before we move forward, Matt, I also want to bring this up, and I couldn't remember whether we talked about it last week, but I do want to bring it up again because it's been reiterated. Rush Limbaugh. Did we talk about this last week? What he said about this is all the Dems playing games, and this is all a big fake. And
I don't think we did talk
right.
About it.
And what was the award that he now wears on his chest, like the Wizard of Oz, given out, if you the heart. He doubled down on that, and by the way, so did a whole lot of other right wing shock jocks, and this, to me, is just unacceptable. Unacceptable. I cannot handle this. And I don't understand the Dems not responding in, big voice to this kind of crap. And that's going to lead us into what we're going to discuss in a minute. But I also wanted to add this. There is a money issue here too, and I wanted to ask you about that. Trump says he wants $2.5 billion, and Schumer and Nancy come back with, no, we're going to make it $8.5 billion. Well, what's that? What is that? Is that, what kind of game is that? Is that a game? Is that politics? Is that, what? What's going on with this fight over money?
These things always tend to be bigger than people imagine. So it's, they wind up with a first figure and then it tends to go up. I think the Democrats I'll take them at their word that they think $8 billion is what's required, but also they want to, try to demonstrate to the public their seriousness about the disease and contrast it with Trump, who's spending less. We'll see what it costs. I don't think there's going to be any problem getting Congress to spend the money as it comes in.
I don't think so either. And on this subject,
you may have a couple of, hardcore types who say, no, it's, why spend the money on this when we could have tax cuts? But
people died. Boy. Yeah. And on this subject, we'll leave it at this, a vaccine, 1.5 years away.
Oh, yeah.
And worse, these kind of viruses, particularly viruses that are flu-like, morph within 5 seconds, and so vaccines often don't do the job anyway.
Exactly.
How wonderfully depressing.
I think you're.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's really no cure. It's a matter of trying to slow the spread.
And the spread.
So wash your hands, Halli.
You too.
Lots of sanitizer.
Lots of. Oh boy, I'll tell you what. Yeah, that's all that. Or never. Remember what I said last week? Never leave your house. I'm stocking up.
Sneeze into your elbow.
That's it. But I'm stocking up. I'm getting that food pantry filled up. And thank God for deliveries. Just leave it on on my doorstep. Thank you very much.
Right. Yes.
We're down here. It's weird because if this virus gets here, I'm telling you, I told you, this was ground zero for polio and a whole lot of other diseases. Remember what Trump said about this will go away when the weather gets warmer or colder or less whatever.
Yes,
it's the opposite down here.
Not so much.
Not the opposite down here. All right.
Yeah.
So while all of this was going on, there was also this debate in South Carolina. Yikes. What are your initial, what were you thinking watching that thing? And talk to me.
Well, it was, I think it's been widely and justifiably criticized as, really one of the worst run debates in a long time in terms of the moderators letting it get out of hand and then asking lame questions. And it was just, it was bad from that standpoint. And then the candidates were less than inspiring. Let's put it that way.
Jeez. It was a weird night.
I don't think it'll go down in history of great oratory.
Can I say something?
It's your show, of course you can.
It's our show. I would like to say this. I would like to say that before we even get into the why in the Gayle King? What's the story with Gayle King? I have to ask this because everybody asks me about this. I mean, she's Oprah's best friend. I mean, what criteria did she have to be there? Because she's on a CBS entertainment morning show? CBS really has had a rough time for the last couple of years. No question about it. But Norah O'Donnell has this. How did she let this get so out of hand? I mean, you really have to give it, it's just.
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, I'm sure they thought, Well, I don't really know. I don't know how they wound
Well,
up
I think
with,
the reason I bring
this.
it up because this is reality TV. This is the Trump effect again. This is downgrading everything to this. You know, how you going to sell it, and image, and whatever, and slugfest, and, you know, and clicks. You know, we have to talk about that to some degree because this is unacceptable. We are so getting down into the depths of disgusting, and when it starts to get into the presidential, contest, this really, I had to go there. So I went there. Y'all know where I am on that. All right. But let's talk about, also what happened during that debate. And I want to start with Warren. Okay. So I'm just going to say to you that there's an ugly side to her. She held check for years and years and years, and it's on full display when she's up against the wall. And I mean, all of my women friends, and maybe it's, generational, were like, is she kidding? Stop it. You just completely lost my vote. If you were, I mean, she was over the top.
Was there any particular thing she said that?
It's her, when she went after him after Bloomberg over and again, even when he was there apologizing, even after he, said, I'll let the NDAs, we won't do that anymore. I listened to what you said. I mean, he was really like the first person to ever really, when does a presidential candidate, cave, backtrack, do whatever. And he handled, I thought, with aplomb. And then her line about you killed the baby, you kill pregnant women or whatever. That was just a bridge too far. I mean, you have to be gracious in all of this. Everybody. So she, and I don't even know she's making the right choice going after him versus going after Bernie, who's really the person who's keeping her, out of the seat she wants. Do you have any thoughts on her?
Well, I don't think it's helped her. I mean, it's brought Bloomberg down. I mean, I think she's single-handedly done a lot.
Well, I don't know if that brought him down or his bad performance brought him down. That was pretty bad too.
Well, bad performance, but she
added.
It was bad performance because he couldn't respond to her in large measure, and so I think she's affecting the dynamics of the race in a big way, but it's just not in any way that really seems to be helping her.
Right.
So the problem is, I think with Klobuchar and Warren having home state contests on Super Tuesday, they're staying in for that. And I think they're all going to stay in past South Carolina probably, and so.
It's a nightmare.
By that time, who knows what Sanders will have racked up in terms of delegates and whether he's created an almost unsurmountable lead by then. So,
well, let's talk about Biden.
I don't think anybody's going anywhere.
Well, let's talk. Let's explain that. Okay, they're splitting the vote on the moderate side. So, for those of you who don't understand how the dynamics of this works, is as long as there are all of these moderates in there, no one person can rack up the amount of votes that they need in order to fight the one Bernie sort of control thing. So that's that. But I want to go back to like a guy like Steyer who spent $1 gazillion and all he's doing is taking votes away from Biden, because Steyer doesn't have a chance in hell of getting anywhere. I mean, if you're into politics and you understand the name of the game, to me, it's such a stain on a Klobuchar or a Warren or a Steyer, to stay in when you understand what it means if you do stay in. They lose my respect. They go down like a whole lot of notches because you got to take one for the team sometimes. So I do think there's that. And as far as Warren, you know who endorsed Warren? Which just gives you a show that this is like Ann Coulter. How perfect is that? I mean, two peas in a pod. But anyway, I'm saying that at this point, it's a disgrace, an absolute disgrace, that their egos are taking over. Now, I read this morning, and I heard from a couple of friends that, and I don't know if this is true, that Dem party leaders are actually willing to risk the entire image to get rid of Sanders and make sure that he is not the nominee. I know the polls, inside polls, are showing that he's pulling the down ballot down horribly, like lose the House kind of horribly. But you talked to me about that.
Yeah, well, I think it's likely we'll see a really strong anybody but Bernie movement really take off. And yeah, there is a lot of concern about him. Nobody really, I mean, Sanders is trying a largely untested theory of politics, which is that, like, don't worry about the people who have been voting. I'm going to meet so many people who don't vote or never vote or rarely vote that's going to more than make up for that. And that's a pretty risky proposition.
In a year that I don't think we should be risking anything. This is not a good
and so,
business
instead of talking about Trump, they're talking about Castro and, other Bernie obsessions. And, yeah, I mean, if the seats picked up in these swing districts, most of those folks are fretting. Now, if you're, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and you're in a super Democratic district, it doesn't matter who's at the top of the ticket, and if it's your guy Bernie, all the better. But if you're from, all the swing districts that Democrats picked up in Kansas, Oklahoma,
right.
Orange County, California,
right.
Places they haven't won in a long, long time. This is risky. So you got to imagine that, both Schumer and Pelosi are kind of freaked.
Buttigieg is another one.
Not to mention, he's not even a Democrat.
Well,
I mean,
in Florida, they're trying to get him off the ballot down here because there's a rule in Florida that you have to be a declared, party person to run. And there's actually, they're working to see if they can get him off the ballot in Florida because he's not a declared Democrat. How do you like that?
Yeah, well, interesting, because, I mean, I'm amazed that's not more of an issue, that, like, it's just considered, no big deal that he's not a Democrat.
But it is a big deal. But on the other hand,
it is a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about Buttigieg because I understand he's trying to play some game right now with delegates, but he doesn't have a chance. He's another one. Get out. Goodbye. It's been swell. And then there's Bloomberg, okay, who did better at this debate. He did. But he also could get out and say, I'm throwing my money too.
Yeah, he could go back to being a super PAC.
There is that too.
Yeah.
I mean, because it doesn't look like he's got a Chinaman's chance either. But that brings us back to Biden, who, the Never Trumper pundits were going crazy. He did a great job. You knew this was going to happen. He could have been like the worst, and they would have said he did a great job because they want him. Obviously, he's more to their liking than obviously a Bernie is concerned. But and they have their reason for wanting to take multiple reasons for taking Trump out if they possibly could. But the fact of the matter is, Biden did do a damn good job. I thought he was. If he could only stay, they need to give him like shots of whatever they gave Kennedy.
Yeah.
But he did very well, and he did very well last night on that thing. He got the Clyburn endorsement, and
yeah, I mean, there are some signs of life there.
The
patient has a pulse.
The patient has a pulse, and so like you have to say, so what? Help him, Democrats, help him. I wish we had more time for this. We don't, but today. But I will also say this. Speaking of debates, I just have to throw this out. Assuming it is, Biden, is Trump going to debate? LBJ didn't debate Goldwater, right? Do you remember that? I seem to remember.
No, there were no debates.
And Nixon also didn't debate
68 or 72.
Right.
No, the debates came back in 76.
So, You know? So, and I think that Trump won't debate because I think he's just.
I think Trump will debate.
You think he will? Well, it depends on who it is. If it's,
I think he feels like he did well last time, and yeah, I mean, you can't predict anything about Trump, but if I had to bet.
Yeah. For all we know, he won't be in office by the time debates because who knows, what pops up next.
Yeah.
I want to bring up the Roger Stone pardon deal. And I say that the Roger Stone pardon because there's a big fight going on and behind the scenes as to whether he would get a pardon or not. Of course, we don't know whether he's going to get a retrial yet either because it turns out, they're going for a retrial on it. And, the judge seemed, at least willing to listen to it, although she asked them, did you guys vet this one juror? And did you go on Google? That's the first thing y'all are supposed to do. And the prosecutor, no, we didn't do that. So I don't know. It's very rare you get retrials. But it turns out we all know that Roger Stone knows everything there is to know and more about Trump. So he's fighting back. I mean, even Kushner apparently is telling him, you cannot do this. But there's this little thing about if you've been impeached, this is somewhere in all of this, that you're not allowed to pardon after an impeachment, particularly if it's materially related to the case you were impeached for. Do you know anything about that?
Don't know anything about that.
Let's check that out for next week because
okay.
It's a story that's starting to bubble, and there are people who are saying, yeah, this is true. I don't know. I didn't have time to check it out. There was a vote yesterday, Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act. I'm trying to figure out why this is 2020 and we're into an anti-lynching act now vote. But 4 Republicans voted no. One of them was Justin Amash, who was a libertarian. Nobody. He's not a he left the party. What the hell? You got anything to say about that? What the? I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't get it. I'm sure they have some argument. I just don't know what it is. And I doubt it's very persuasive. Right.
And while all of this is going on, and we're trying to figure out what's going on and what have you in the future of the election and the coronavirus, if we're all going to be around to vote, or if there will be a vote, because they may even cancel the Olympics in Tokyo if this continues. Only canceled during the war once, I think, right? But another mass shooting that didn't even get 2 seconds of anybody's time, for all intent and purposes, in Milwaukee at Molden Chorus, 5 dead, including the shooter who killed himself. I mean, it's become so commonplace, it's not even news anymore.
Yeah, it's a fact of life, yeah. It's awful.
It is awful. Anyway, we have a great guest, in our friend, Phil Rucker is here. He's going to be talking
I will be listening
next about his very interesting, a very stable genius. And I have to tell you, talking to him is interesting. He truly is one of the great journalists. He doesn't want to be anything more than a journalist. He does not want to comment. He just wants to report. He's interesting.
No, he's great.
He's a good guy.
Look forward. Look forward to listening.
Yeah. So as we leave, talk to me. Anything we should be looking for next week?
Well, let's see what happens in South Carolina. It's it's going to be very interesting to see, if Biden can win and what happens with the African American vote in this important state. It's going to be interesting.
Does he have to win by a lot, or can he just kind of skirt by?
Who knows? Yeah, I think the more the better for him.
Yeah. Okay. That's it. Over and out. Good night, George.
Thanks, Halli. Night, Gracie. Night.
See ya. You were listening to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern at hallicasserjayne.com and is available wherever you listen to your podcasts. Find us on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, on all your favorite apps. You'll find the podcast on your Alexa device, too. Just say, The Halli Casser-Jayne Show. Oh, and come play with me on Twitter at The Halli CJ Show. Philip Rucker is the White House bureau chief at the Washington Post, leading its coverage of President Trump and his administration. Rucker and a team of Post reporters won the Pulitzer Prize and George Polk Award for their reporting on Russia's interference in the 2016 presidential election. And now Rucker and Pulitzer Prize winner fellow Washington Post reporter Carol Leonnig examine the evolution of Trump's presidency and leadership style and take readers behind the scenes to reveal never-before-reported details of Trump's shocking behavior with new evidence of chaos in his administration in their New York Times best-selling book, A Very Stable Genius, Donald J. Trump's Testing of America. Let's talk with Philip Rucker. Hello, Mr. Rucker.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. I've been dying to talk to you for such a long time. Let's start here, Phil. This has got me crazy.
Oh, great.
All right. A Very Stable Genius is based on both your and, of course, co-author Carol Leonnig's unique high-level access with key players in the Trump administration. And you guys did, hundreds and hundreds of hours of interviews to all sorts of people. You know what my question is, though? Is Trump a good man or an evil man or something in between? What did you derive from all of this? It's a fair question.
It's a fair question, and I'm going to give you a disappointing answer, which is that Carol and I are reporters. We're finding information. We're not making character judgments about the people we cover, and it's really not our place or my place to say whether he's good or evil. But I can tell you what the people we talked to thought, and you're right that Carol and I spent hundreds of hours in interviews for this book. We spoke with more than 200 senior administration officials and advisors, friends, confidants of the president, and many of them, not all of them, but many of them are deeply concerned about his leadership. They are fearful for the country in his control. They believe his decision-making is erratic. They see his management style as abusive. They think he can be cruel and mean. They find him charismatic and in some ways, a very compelling communicator and fun to be around, but they are just very concerned about his lack of knowledge and the danger that they think he is putting the country in.
You just described the devil. I have to tell you, because that is in all of that. I mean, charismatic, bright, all of those things. That's how they get in there and they do these crazy things and they manipulate and they carry on. But before I go further with that, A Very Stable Genius is the title of the book. Tell people why you use that title, because I don't know that everybody knows.
Yeah, thank you for the question about the title, because I think it is commonly misunderstood. It is not a snarky title. It is a serious book. This is rigorous reporting, fact. It's a history of the Trump presidency. And when selecting a title, Carol and I wanted to use the president's own words. A Very Stable Genius is the description Trump gave for himself. Back in January of 2018, there was a national discussion underway about his psychological health, his mental acuity, whether he was fit to be the president. And Trump tweeted that he was not only a genius, but a very stable genius. And he has used that self-description at least 4 additional times. And it's a catchy phrase, and it's one that he kind of created for himself. And so Carol and I thought, what better to use as a title than his own self-description, to hold it up as a mirror and stress test it against the accounts of more than 200 people who've worked at his side and worked for him.
Here's something that we hear a lot. We hear that a lot of the people in the administration don't want to talk, stay there because they think they can have more influence over him when there versus if they were to leave. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's true? Is that what you heard? Or what?
I think that's absolutely true. It's of course not true for everybody, and there are people in the administration who are there because they're true believers, and they adore and admire this president and want to execute everything he wants done. But many of the people that we write about in a very stable genius the Jim Mattises, the John Kellys, the Rex Tillersons, even the Reince Priebises of the world. And these are all household names now for so many Americans. They served this president despite their concerns about his conduct and his behavior because they saw themselves as guardrails. They thought they were protecting the country. They wanted to try to be present, to counsel, to guide the president away from making rash and dangerous decisions. But many of them have been discarded now, and in their place are enablers, people like Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, Mick Mulvaney, the acting White House Chief of Staff, men, most of them are men, who see their jobs as getting to a yes, as executing what the president wants done, as placating his wishes, his conspiracies, his whims, and effectively being yes men.
So you know a lot of these guys. You've been working around them forever, reporting on them. A guy like Pompeo.
I do.
What's the deal there? I mean, is Trump the Svengali, and they're just weak people who are power hungry, and they attach on to this? I mean, some of this is just difficult to fathom in the wake of the fact that everything that Trump is so out there. He hides nothing. I just don't understand it, and I know my listeners don't understand it. I think it's the one question I'm asked the most, by the way, is, what's the story here with these people who go along with this guy when it's so clear, who he is? Is this all a power structure? Maybe that's the question.
It's interesting. It's certainly there's a power dynamic at play. Mike Pompeo is a smart man, by the way, top of his class at West Point. Trained as a lawyer, I believe, a very smart member of Congress, but he's also a political animal in a way. He understands politics. He understands that the Republican electorate has almost complete fealty to Donald Trump and has for several years. He sees the tides of populism in this country, and he's trying to get behind that and be supportive of it. And he's power hungry. He wants control. He wants power. He sees the Trump presidency as an opportunity for him to become the Secretary of State. He wants to be president someday himself. So in a way, he's doing this job because he wants that position of power, and he's able to have an extraordinary amount of influence over the direction of the country.
And Bill Barr?
A similar dynamic there. Barr, of course, was the Attorney General before, back in the 90s during the George H.W. Bush administration, and has an expansive view of executive power. He has long believed that a president has an extraordinary amount of power given to him by the Constitution. That predates Trump, of course, but it neatly aligns with the way Trump views his own power. And so Barr is a willing enabler of Trump's at the moment. He is in there in part to protect the president, but also to protect the president's power and to help him exercise it.
It's almost as if this cast of characters, this unseemly, and that's being nice, cast of characters came together, at the wrong time, in the wrong place, led by the wrong leader. I mean, we don't like to use the Hitler analogy, but again, that's a place in history where all sorts of dynamics came together at the same time. Trump is a genius, a savant. Some have. There's this fine line between genius and madness. All of these folks that you talk to, could you do this for me? Could you say most of them think that he's a genius, most of them don't, most of them think he's crazy, most of them don't? What's your overall assessment of what those people in total thought or think?
You can't put everybody in the same category, obviously, but most of the people who have worked for and who continue to work for the president do not see him as a genius and do not see him as stable. And in fact, some have pointed out that anybody who has to call himself a stable genius is neither stable nor a genius. There are certainly genius characteristics that Trump has. He has an incredible ability to communicate with his supporters, to build an emotional bond with his political base. And that requires some level of genius, but he is not a particularly educated man. He is not smart. He has gaping holes in his knowledge about American history, about the world, about basic geography that we show and reveal in this book. And he does not always have a curious mind to learn more information to fill those holes. Rather, he has an incredible faith in his own gut and his own ability to make a decision in the moment, even without the necessary information.
I'm reading your book, and can I just tell you, I'm gasping as I'm reading. Seriously, I'm gasping. I'm like, I don't it's just, guys, you got to read this thing, because it's like every page, a page turner, really, in a way. It's like, what is he going to tell us next?
Thank you.
No, it's true. It's like, oh my God. But okay, so we get to past the oh my God, and you say, and there's also this very bizarre childlike aspect to him that you guys portray from these interviews, and an impetuousness that's just bizarre. There's this one story that he doesn't want to go to. He's in Paris. He doesn't want to. He's having a hissy fit because of I guess the midterm elections. Remember that story? I mean, it just blew me away.
Yeah.
Tell us quickly about that.
He was in Paris for a memorial for World War I, and all the other, Allied leaders were there. The Chancellor of Germany, the President of France, obviously, the Prime Minister of the UK, the President of Russia, all there to pay homage to those who died in World War I. And President Trump was furious about the midterm election results back in the United States, and it's raining in Paris, and he was due to go to the cemetery for this memorial, and he didn't want to go out into the storm. He didn't want to make the trip. There was concerns about the helicopter being able to fly all the way out to this cemetery, and he called off the trip. And John Kelly, the chief of staff at the time, went instead, and along with General Dunford, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and they paid the visit to the memorial. But Trump got ripped in the press for it, and even John Kerry went on Twitter and said Trump's afraid of the rain ruining his hair. And Trump just got really upset about this, and then he just lashed out at Kelly and blamed him for the decision and for not having advised him to go to the cemetery. He wouldn't even take ownership of his own choice not to go to that cemetery, and instead was looking to cast blame, which fits with the pattern of his management style. He was always making mistakes and creating his own crises, but then turning around, casting about for somebody else to blame.
Another one that got to me, we know he's a known conspiracy theorist. I don't know if this belongs under that headline, but he privately complained about the domestic abuse allegations against Staff Secretary Rob Porter, who at the time I think was dating Hope Hicks, who, by the way, is back in the White House helping, I guess, with the re-election, right? She left for 2 years. But anyway, he posited that one of Porter's ex-wives had likely faked her injuries, or what? Talk to me about that. I mean, no, this was really disturbing for some of the people who witnessed it. The Rob Porter situation, as your listeners may remember, he was the White House staff secretary, one of the senior-most positions in the government, and it came out that he had been accused of domestic abuse allegations on two of his ex-wives. There was a photo of one of the ex-wives that surfaced in the press showing a black eye, evidence of abuse of some kind. And Trump wanted to defend Porter, and he actually speculated privately in the White House that maybe Porter's ex-wife made it all up and ran herself into a refrigerator in order to show the bruise so that she could somehow get money out of Porter. That is not the case, obviously. Porter ended up leaving the office, and it was an episode, a comment by the president that the people who heard it were just really shaken by and disturbed by. Magical thinking. Listen to me. I want to say this to you. You've been living and breathing Trump for years now. How are you doing after living in the head of this stable genius? I mean, I am feeling like overcooked scrambled eggs from covering this story for the last years. What about you?
First of all, I'm doing fine, and I appreciate your kindness in asking. It is exhausting. I will tell you that. I've been covering him since he walked down the escalator in 2015, and I've been the White House bureau chief at the Washington Post, leading our day-to-day coverage of the administration from day one, and it's exhausting. It's dizzying. It's frankly one of the reasons why Carol and I wanted to hit pause and go back and do this reporting, to write the book and better understand what it is that we've all been experiencing and witnessing all these years. But as a journalist, I feel such a privilege to get to do this work right now. It is such an important time for our country, a challenging time for our profession, and I'm so lucky to be able to do this reporting and to have the backing and support of my bosses and colleagues at the Washington Post, but also, frankly, the support of so many people around the country who are cheering us on.
The subtitle of the book is Donald Trump's Testing of America. I got to ask you this. So we come to November. If they don't defeat Trump, right, is it a fatal blow, in your opinion, to the Republic as we know it? Will America have failed Trump's test? I think I got to ask you that, and you got 1 second to answer.
Yeah. I don't know, and I'm not in the predictions business, but we'll have to see. This is certainly going to be a big test, and if he is reelected, I think he will be even more unshackled and unbound and testing the limits of the rule of law and all the other norms that he's busted through.
Thank you for a terrific, terrific book, and thank Carol, too. Nice talking with you.
Thank you so much.
Sure. I've been speaking with Philip Rucker, along with Carol Leonnig, the author of A Very Stable Genius, Donald Trump's Testing of America. To purchase the book, visit fine bookstores everywhere and follow Philip Rucker on Twitter, where his handle is Philip Rucker. Thank you for tuning in to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, a production of Resec LLC. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, and is available at hallicasserjayne.com and on all your favorite apps. Be sure to visit us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and follow me on Twitter at The Halli CJ Show. Until next time, this is Halli Casser-Jayne.